The Four Horsemen have invited the community to join them in the build of a Hot Wheels custom 62 Chevy with the theme of a shop truck. Now, not long after my channel started, Deep Junk Garage did a shop truck build invitational, and I built Scrappy the Shop Truck, chopping up a combi, merging it with a bone shaker, taking a bunch of parts, came up with something that I was pretty happy with, and to this day it's the most popular video for my channel. So I thought, well, let me do some chopping again. Now, in the past I did a lot of chops, and then I kind of tapered off. Back, it was at the start, New Year's Day a couple years ago, that Funky over at Scale Street Garage and I did Battle of the Blades. And we used our jeweler saws and came up with some customs. And I haven't done much chopping since then. This year, I think I've only done maybe one or two. So it's fun to get back to this. I was lucky that I had this casting already. Mike Hawkins sent it to me earlier this year. So when the Four Horsemen announced that this was going to be the December build, I didn't have to do any shopping. I already had it. That always helps. So I got this thing ready, and then I tried to figure out exactly where I wanted to cut it. I decided I wanted to shorten the bed. On my community tab, the chunks that I cut out here, I put them on there with a clue at the top of the page that said 3 feet 4 inches. And that's all it said, trying to have people guess what the chunk was from. And actually, there were some really good guesses, and one or two actually hit it on the nose. I think Christian over at 1st and 64th was the one who had the dead-on guess at what it was. Sorry, a momentary brain fart there. Now, what's different is instead of using the jeweler saw as often as I used to, now I'm using the X-Acto saw because it makes this kind of cut a lot easier, a lot straighter, easier. And this is just a dead flat cut on the sides of this truck, so there's nothing in the way. You don't need to do anything too fancy angle-wise with that blade. So it makes a straight cut much easier. So there you see, I lopped the back of the bed off, the chunk I wanted. It has a side exhausts on this casting. That's what I was going to lose, was the side exhausts, that little tiny section. And you see there, I'm masking off for this cut right on the bed line, which kind of lets me cheat. It's going to make where that shortened bed attaches not need to be that typically smooth, seamless line that you need to get on other chops. You know, I lowered the top on a van earlier this year. I think it was 6 scale inches. And so it was a very small chunk that came out, a sliver in a way. And I didn't use the X-Acto saw for that. And afterwards, I realized that was pretty stupid. I should have used the X-Acto saw in that cut. And so I told myself, you know, in the future, don't always go to the jeweler saw. As much as I've taken advantage of it in the past, it isn't always the best tool to have for some of these cuts. So there you see where I'm going with this. And instead of the first one that was Scrappy the Shop Truck, this sister of it here is going to be Stubby the Shop Truck. So, as you probably saw in the thumbnail already. Now, since I figured out what I was cutting out off the bed and where I was shortening the bed, now it's just a matter of getting that interior and the chassis to match. And that's something that I think as I've been learning as I go along, that's something that I'm better at than I once was, is getting these pieces to really fit almost like they were made at the factory in a way. You know, instead of just kind of then slopping it together and having it be just one glued together big piece, I still end up with, you know, the casting itself, the center section, and the chassis as 3 separate pieces. Once I make those cuts, before I strip the chrome off, this chrome on here, it had a bluish cast to it. So I didn't even try to save, say, the front bumper that I'm going to chrome anyway. I thought, no, I've got to get rid of this bluish chrome. So once I sand these pieces down, get the fit where I want it, I do end up getting rid of that chrome. These builds are always fun, and I'm not sure why I've stopped doing as many of these chops as I used to. But during 2022, I'm going to try and get back to some of this because it really is a lot of fun. There you can see where I'm going with those pieces and how I want them to fit just as if they came from the factory this way. In case you're curious, the bed was only tacked on at that point with CA glue. Now I'm throwing these chrome pieces into the Super Clean to strip that chrome off of them. When I strip paint on castings, when I throw things in the Super Clean, I like to thread a wire through any holes if I can, or wrap a wire around it like I had to do on one of these sections, and drop it in the liquid. It makes it much easier for me to get it out instead of fishing for it in there with, say, something like a hemostat, or, you know, trying to paint stripper on in a bowl, something, you know, that I've done on large castings. But when I do it in a jar with the paint stripper, I can let it, then pull it up on the wire and just let it drip off for a few hours if I want, saving as much of the stripper as possible for future use. And it just makes it so much easier. Now here on the chassis, I'm doing the same thing I did before, getting the size where I want it. This I cut ever so slightly too small. But yeah, that was no problem. You can't really tell it from what I'm doing here. But typically I try and not cut off too much and then sand down to the point where it's the perfect fit. In this case, I pretty much cut it where it had to be the perfect fit. I don't believe I got it on camera where I end up CA gluing the 2 pieces of the chassis together. I did not use the Plastistruct adhesive for that, or cement. On this, I just use CA glue to hold it together. I like when I can to put screws in the base so the 2 pieces are actually held in place, and then just glue it like that. Now the center section, after it came out of the Super Clean, it had that stupid fake surfboard in there, fake broken surfboard that I'm going to sand out. But you'll see there's that notch in the bottom. And if I were to sand straight through, you'd have that hole. So right there, I'm just making some grooves to give it a little friction so that I can put resin in there. So I filled this in from the bottom using the resin pin. And it took a couple passes to fill it. And you know, fill it up as you can with some resin. You hit it with the UV light that's on the other end of the Bondic pin. You could have done this with CA glue. There's a few things you could have done this with. I liked using the resin for this. So once that's filled in, then I can comfortably file the other side and get rid of that stupid surfboard fragment. That's even smaller now that I've shortened it. And just make it a regular bed. You know, there were some lines in the bed that once I get through filing that surfboard out of there, I do take another file, a diamond-shaped file, and just cut grooves back in. I complete the grooves that are there to just make it look like a groove bed. And there you see how I had filed down so much. You can see how it's a little more translucent in that section where the resin is underneath. At this point, I fitted that center section in, and this is where I'm using, again, that plastic weld cement, just on the top edge, just to get it to hold. And it's a clean hold using this stuff. The capillary action fills along the edge that I'm trying to seal. But I'm not just going to bank on that. And I put CA glue on the underside to strengthen it. And, this isn't going to go anywhere. I'm not gluing that into place. I'm gluing the two pieces together, but I'm doing that in the casting because I want the fit to be perfect. If I tried to do that just on the desktop, Lord knows how it would work out. There you can see how I have the three pieces at this point. And they're all looking pretty good. And so you knew it was coming. It had to be. There has to be some JB Weld on here. So you may recall on the Jerry Titus Firebird, where I sealed in the doors that normally opened on the casting. Same kind of approach on this one. Even though the bed is fixed because of CA glue, I went over those outside, basically those seam marks, trying to make it look as if it came from the factory with the shortened bed. And so I don't want those lines to go away because they should be there to show the bed, how the bed attaches to the rest of the truck. And then I put a very thin layer of JB Weld on the inside. Again, just to give it a little more strength. And it's JB Weld. It has to find its way into a build. The casting itself was not the cleanest thing in the world. I considered getting rid of the sunroof, and I originally planned to before I thought about shortening the bed. Once the bed was shortened and I took a look at it, I knew I needed to keep the sunroof. The Buffing Metalizer paint. This is the last time you're going to see this. This is discontinued and the can is finally empty. I chose to paint it with that, and, well, it's interesting. As I'm shortening the Samed wheels that I throw on here, let me just talk about the paint for a second. That metalizer, buffing metalizer, you basically spray it on, and then you take like a Kleenex and wipe it off. And it buffs up to a metallic shine, but you still have to seal it. And I wanted to use it on a body of a casting for once. I've used it, when you've seen me do the twin mill conversions, I've often used it to paint the base, to give the base an original redline look. And I hadn't really used it on a body yet, and so I used it on this one. And I'm happy with the color of the truck, but it's just odd, the reflectivity of it and the inconsistency of when you buff it, how it turns out. And you'll end up with it's like an odd surface. And even though I do put a gloss clear coat over it, and that looks okay, the paint itself on the body isn't the most consistent thing. And you'll see that like behind one of the rear wheels. It's almost a little rashy, for lack of a better term. Oh, gauzy, gauzy, gauzy. Yeah, I had to get that in this build too. But it's my first and last time to use that metalizer paint. And well, I'm happy with the color. And I wasn't sure what other color I was going to go on this, to be honest with you. I did not want to go another red because I'm becoming way too predictable with the reds. So, and I didn't want to go a weathered look, and I didn't, there were a lot of things I didn't want to do with this. So it is what it is. You'll see the result, and let me know what you think of it. I did do some detail work on the interior, painting the seats gray. here I am using a Gundam fine line marker. And you can see how I cut the lines in the bed up there. Now I'm just filling them in that center section. Those were already there, and I just lengthened these once the surfboard was filed out. I did paint the back half of this as well with the metalizer paint so that the bed matched the rest of the truck. More importantly, so the back wall of the cab matches the truck, which is easy to screw up on this one because this separate section is what has the back of the bed. So it'd be really easy to have that be a different color inadvertently. I did do the Molotow pin for the front bumper in chrome. There is no back bumper on this little custom as far as I can tell. That was removed. And so I didn't try and put a chrome back bumper back there either. I did mix up a little light, very pale egg white, or what do they call it, robin's egg blue paint for the headlights, and now I'm putting the micro crystal clear over them. I know this video has been exceptionally long. There was a lot going on. I did use the contrast black Templar to do the grill as well on here. So here it is at assembly time finally. There you can see I did put some details, taillights, that kind of stuff. I'd like to take a moment now that we're at this point to thank the Four Horsemen for inviting the community to do this build. Gave me a good excuse to chop something up. So thanks, guys. There is a link to their page in the video description. Please check out their channels and all of the other builders in this event. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people doing this. And thanks again, guys. And let's finish putting this together. You see, I did do the exhaust on the bottom of the chassis down there. You'll see it here in a second. And I just had little downpipes behind the exhaust. I didn't try and run anything straight out the back or anything like that. I like the Samed wheels on here, the chrome Samed wheels. And these are just self-tapping screws. I thought I was going to put washers on them at first, and then I didn't need it. And just a little short 256 by 1/8, I believe. Self-tappers going really well. And this thing's a real champ when it comes to rolling. I didn't do a turntable shot of the original vehicle. That's why you only saw the still at the start of this video. Somehow I missed doing one. So in the turntable video for this build, that isn't really, you don't really get a true aspect of the color. And you'll see it in the glamour shots at the end. But there's where it ended up. And again, it looks more silver here, whereas you'll see in the glamour shots coming up, it's a much more metallic look to it. But I hope you like Stubby the Shop Truck. I'm not one for putting my logo on here. You know, if it were truly my shop truck, I'm going to run around without any logos or anything like that. I'm just going to go to the parts store and pick crap up. There's where it started. That was the original vehicle. And now let's go to a glamour shot and you'll see there's the change. So again, I hope you like this. And looks like we made it to the end of 2021, everybody. Hopefully 2022 is a much better year for everybody. And thanks for all of your support this year with the channel. And I hope you've had as much fun watching these videos as I've had doing them and doing these little cars. That's what it's all about, you know. It's just having fun with these things. So thank you a lot. Everybody stay safe and healthy out there. And a special thanks to my Patreon members for all of their support. They keep the channel going too. So thank you all very much. And see you next year. Catch you in the next one.